Hello, and welcome to our very special segment featuring some of our prominent individuals here in Florida throughout the state doing the kind of work that not many people can do and not many people do well. But these three individuals are absolutely amazing, and I love them all. So I'm excited to introduce them to you guys. My name is Angelique Godwin. I'm the director of Transgender Equality, or with Equality Florida. And we have been doing a week-long community segment planning that allows all different people from different backgrounds and communities to come together and talk about what Trans Awareness Week means to them and how it's impacted them. So I'm going to start by introducing all of my wonderful reps here. There's some amazing humans in the room. I'm going to start with ladies first. If you would be so kind as to introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Ana Kamani. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm proud to serve as State House Representative for District 42 in the state legislature. I just got reelected on Tuesday, November 5th, and of course, I proudly serve this community, which encompasses parts of the city of Orlando, Winter Park, Belle Isle, Edgewood, Maitland, and the historic town of Eatonville. I was first elected in 2018 and worked at Planned Parenthood of Southwest and Central Florida before I ran for office, and I continued to work in the nonprofit sector as well, and just secured my PhD in public affairs at the University of Central Florida. So it's great to be in everyone's company.
Yay.
Right below her, Nathan.
Oh, I was going to show deference to Senator-elect Smith. I sort of thought he should jump in here, but thank you for that. My name is Nathan Brimmer. I use he, him pronouns. I hail from Gulfport or St. Petersburg, Florida. Some folks don't know where Gulfport is. I was hoping to be joining this group with my esteemed colleagues as a state representative, but it wasn't in the cards this year. But I was very excited to run in House District 61 to hope to serve in the Florida House of Representatives. That district in Pinellas County, significantly impacted, unfortunately, by both Hurricane Helene and Milton. It's a big district, 13 different municipalities in that district. I was very proud to enjoy, I think, connecting with thousands and thousands of folks. By way of background for me, leaning into that decision, I'm a former educator, former nonprofit leader, and an attorney practicing here in Pinellas, predominantly in elder law, focusing on probate, as well as estate planning and also some consumer protection work, which I was proud to also do when formerly serving as the state of Florida's LGBTQ consumer advocate under Commissioner Nikki Free's administration with the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. So still an advocate, always an advocate, but very honored to be here with all of you as well. And the work continues. So with that, I'll, I guess, pass it on to Senator-elect Smith. I'm saying that as many times as I can tonight.
No, I don't want to. I want to take a moment to kind of uplift you. Still, you had an amazing race. You did a lot of work. You had some pretty big firsts for your run. So there's a lot of great things that came from you doing that, and because of you, I'm sure you'll inspire others to take up the mantle the same way you did. And we know what to do for next time. And I hope that you continue to do races because you definitely are somebody I think deserves to be in that position. You can create a lot of change without it, but I look forward to seeing what you do when you finally have it in your hands.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And last but definitely not least, Senator-elect Carlos.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on. I am Senator Carlos Guillermo Smith. I represent State Senate District 17, which is in the Central Florida, Orlando area. I, too, was just elected to the Florida Senate by this community who tremendously supported me since we announced our campaign last year. I used to serve in the Florida House of Representatives as well. I was elected in 2016. I served 3 two-year terms. And when I was elected to the Florida House, our campaign made history. I was the first openly LGBTQ Latino lawmaker. We know now more than ever before that queer and LGBTQ representation matters. It's great to be here in this company, and just want to say to Nathan as well, talk about Trans Visibility Week and Trans Awareness Week, because we saw here in Florida that not 1, not 2, but 3 openly trans or non-binary candidates ran for the Florida legislature this year. Nathan, as well as 2 other individuals, 1 for House and 1 for Senate. Unfortunately, they didn't get across the finish line as we had some really disappointing and frankly frightening election results. But if my story is any indication of how people really just should not give up. They shouldn't get discouraged. I lost my 2022 re-election after being misrepresented, after having millions of dollars spent against me, and I didn't give up. I didn't get discouraged, and now I'm joining you here as a state senator for Senate District 17. So it's great to be here during Transgender Awareness Week, and really, really happy to be here.
Yes, awesome. I'm so excited. This is a really cool thing for me to experience as a trans woman who got to walk the halls with both of you. Specifically, Carlos was one of my guides, and Anna's one of the first reps that I got to meet and hang out with my first year at the Capitol 2 years ago, and kind of really get to see what you guys do and the work you do hands on and experience it, and how fierce and ferocious you guys fight for us in the Capitol. So I'm excited to see you there this year, Carlos, and kind of see how you take on the mantle as well. But you guys are definitely the people who I know fight for our rights and everybody in the community, but specifically you have special places in your heart for the trans community. So I'm super happy to have you guys here. And we'll start off with our first question, which is, what does Trans Awareness Week mean to you, whether you're new to it or whether it's something that you've been celebrating every single time, how you might approach it this year, maybe a little bit different after everything you've experienced. So once again, we're going to start around in the same circle that we did for introductions, but just tell me, what is Trans Awareness Week mean to you? Starting with Rep. Anna.
Well, thank you so much again for having us. And I do want to echo the flowers to Nate, because it is not easy running for office, but especially running for office in such a hostile environment. We all know that in the state of Florida, there has been multiple bills passed targeting the transgender community. And then to see that amplified on a national stage from, unfortunately, soon to be reelected in office, President Trump, it's really scary and unsettling. And we are seeing even a handful of Democrats throw trans issues away, which is awful and disgusting and disappointing. It just further demonstrates why we need more representation. We need more allies, or how I like to say accomplices, to really step up and be a voice for inclusivity and a voice for safety for a community that's incredibly marginalized and targeted now in the state of Florida and also across the country. With that said, to the heart of your question, what it means to me is being that accomplice, is being that voice of positivity and that voice of support. I think it's really important for folks who are cisgender and those who are hetero as well to help be the backup, right? In spaces that reflect my district and that reflect my friend network and so forth. Like, I can be that voice, right? To bring a sense of calm and peace and to help unpack, unfortunately, misinformation that has been exploited to divide us versus bring us together. And so I do take that responsibility really seriously. So for me, Trans Awareness Week is really about using the privilege that I have, using the platform that I have, and using the voice that I have to help protect all communities, to help break that misinformation, and just to be a non-judgmental source of information for people, because I do think there are some folks out there who have questions but don't necessarily know where to go. And I want to, of course, thank Equality Florida and Angelique for being that resource. But I also think it's our responsibility as accomplices to help answer those questions and to be as accessible and responsive as possible. Because if we don't address the misinformation, obviously it snowballs and gets worse. So I do think that's going to be some of my approaches. And of course, we'll carry that work and advocacy into the legislature.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, honestly. And I think coming from that standpoint of just helping to break some of the misconceptions and the ideas that are definitely not right by any means, but people came in with these things. We noticed last year, especially in the Capitol, there were just so many people who were uneducated, who just didn't have the know-how or the knowledge. And now we're in a place where there's a lot more, it's more available, more people are speaking up about it. We're hoping that people can kind of grasp the knowledge of it, but it is scary knowing that there are people who just want to steamroll the issue and just take it out without any care or consideration. So thank you for standing and doing the work, or being prepared to do the work, I should say. Nathan?
Sure. Thank you. Thank Rep. Escamani. Yes, we need all that. For me, I think as a transhuman who keeps getting older, so I have more years to reflect back on visibility. I think this year, especially given My decision to run this year and the decision for so many others to run, and talk about giving flowers, I'm going to have to give some flowers up nationally to Representative-elect Sarah McBride, who I heard speak today on C-SPAN. Yes, I'm still that political geek that watches C-SPAN, even though my election is done. But speaking for the first time for all the newly elected folks in the Progressive Caucus, and it was just such an honor to listen to her speak just for those few minutes. And it made me think about, us coming together tonight and recording this, Angelique, to connect with folks. I remember when we didn't have an entire week, right? We base this around Trans Day of Remembrance, which is a remarkably necessary and somber day. But we have, as a community, elevated this and brought it into just a new dynamic. Still elevating and honoring those that we do this fight for who are not with us. But it's amazing. I remember decades ago that they were very small. It wasn't something that, frankly, a lot of folks outside of our community would even gather for. And that progress to me is remarkable, especially at this moment. Whatever it is that may come with policy decisions that we've been threatened with, rights that have been threatened, whatever that rhetoric and decision making is, that progress cannot be taken back. So that celebration for me in that evolution is really remarkable. And I feel in the state of Florida, for us and all of us that do this work, that is going to continue without question. So the visibility for me is reflective and, frankly, firing me up with all the things that we're seeing evolve. There are some real bright parts. there are those stars shining in the sky, right, that we need to see, and there are two of them in front of us that are fierce fighters in our state legislature, and I'm so grateful for. And I think we will continue to see visibility in remarkable ways and unexpected ways that we don't even know about. So the timing for this right after this election was something I've reflected about a lot the last several days, but it is momentous, and it is momentous for me in a very positive way. And so I look forward to what that will bring for us. But I know whatever it is, it will be us, right? The collective us that are doing it. And so for that, I'm truly grateful.
I agree. I think if we're speaking with visibility in mind, you are the best example possible for what visibility means and how much it matters. A lot of people saw you, and people from even I live in Escambia County, and to be able to speak about you, and to trans men specifically that live in that county, they were so mind blown that there was a trans male candidate. And so, especially somebody who's out and proud and not hiding or sheltering in any way, shape, or form. So I think that your reach and your touch, even though you didn't cross the finish line the way that you wanted to, I think you're going to see the impact of just how good it was to have you in the race and to run. And you still do a lot of amazing work. So I know that even though they'll be in the office doing things, you're going to be right side by side with us, helping us lead the way regardless. I don't think you lost anything. I think I'm a pageant girl. Sometimes the one who gets the crown isn't the one who makes the best changes or does the biggest work. It's not always about that. We wanted the title because winning is winning, right? But I think at the end of the day, you're going to see a huge impact that you made, and people are very happy that you ran. So don't feel bad about it at all, because I know you're going to do good work.
And I could learn a lot from I've not done pageants, so I have much respect. But I thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And also, nobody probably wants to see that anyway. So that's not.
I don't know. You'd be surprised, right? National television changes everything. RuPaul's Drag Race. Let's be real. People have a completely different outlook on things once they see it on television. But we'll save you.
That's a different presentation entirely.
Carlos, if you would.
Look, absolutely. If we're talking about why a Trans Awareness Week is so important and what it means to us personally. Look, I'm a cis ally. We know that Trans Awareness Week is not only a time for trans and non-binary individuals to raise awareness for their own community. It's also about the allies and accomplices stepping up to help do that work as well. We know that educating the public about who trans people are, sharing personal stories, sharing experiences, advocating for progress on issues related to prejudice, discrimination, violence that can impact the trans community. These are all really important issues that we need to be talking about. And in the context of where we are in 2024 and the public's relative lack of understanding of the trans community, and that lack of understanding being exploited, it being weaponized for political advantage by extreme politicians. I think in that context, it's more important than ever that we do educate the public on these issues. And an example of how we can do it well, I think it's important for folks to remember 20 years ago, opposing marriage equality was a political wedge issue for the Republican Party and for the far right. Today, Gallup polls in 2024 actually show that more than 2/3 of Americans, which is a record high, support the freedom to marry, compared to just 27% when they actually started polling it like 20 years ago, when it was a wedge issue. And that didn't happen by mistake. It happened because gay and lesbian couples really made visibility and awareness of who they were something that was a top priority that could not only seek the political ends that we were advocating for, freedom to marry, but also prevent the continued weaponization of who they were as a community for political purposes. We know that extensive long-term advocacy and canvassing, if you will, in this way, and not in the form of just door-to-door canvassing, obviously, but in the form of just sharing those stories. This can have an impact in helping folks really understand the trans community, and we can get to that place for trans issues. It's just going to require that long-term advocacy and deep canvassing, if you will, to change the hearts and minds. So that's why I think Trans Awareness Week is so important, and that we stay committed to it.
I think that it's really cool to have people who are allies speak so candidly or speak so happily about fighting that fight, or visibility being so important, or what it means. And to Nathan's point, wasn't a week before. Trans Day of Remembrance even itself is now something that we're using as a catalyst for celebration rather than mourning. It's the stepping stone to the future, and a chance to share stories about these people who may never, they'll never tell their story again. So we get to share their stories and tell people about them and keep them alive on this one particular day. But this week in and of itself gives us the opportunity to share those stories. But I think ally stories are super important at this time too, because there's growth in some of those stories. There's honor and there's love and there's respect in some of those stories, because people who didn't know now know and are sharing what they know, right? So that's paying it forward, so to speak. And so having people like you and Rep. Anna on this call today is really important, I think, because people need to see that there's other people doing the work and that there are allies who truly do care. So thank you guys again for both being here, for sharing why it matters to you. And I mean, showing up is literally saying that it matters, right? Because you're taking time out of your busy schedules to be here just to talk about it. So thank you. And with that point, we want to kind of talk about something. You all have hinted to it, but I kind of want to give you a moment to speak on it fully. But some of the stigmas that you're hearing or facing as candidates, or as people who work in these profile situations. Nathan, as a lawyer as well, you have a great, this year has been crazy for you too as well. So I would love to hear, what are some of the stigmas you guys, or the most relevant stigma that you've heard so far leading up to today and this week, with something that, a myth you might want to bring to attention? And I'm going to go in reverse. We're going to start with Carlos first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, one myth that I've seen put out there as recently as just a couple days ago is that the idea of being transgender is some modern construct that was just invented over the last couple of years. I know a lot of folks have probably heard that and been like, wait, what? Are folks on the far right claiming that being trans or non-binary, or even gender fluidity, if you will, is something that was just recently invented by liberals? Of course not. Trans folks and the concept of gender fluidity is something that's been around forever. Transgender and non-binary people have existed across history, across various cultures, long before we started using these terms to describe the community. We know that, for example, many indigenous cultures in North America have obviously long recognized the existence of individuals who embody both masculine and feminine pronouns. We know that that is generally referred to as an individual who is two-spirit, and they're often seen within their own community as spiritual leaders, healers, mediators. They're spiritual leaders, of course, as I just mentioned. So it's not only there. You know, we're also talking about how in South Asia, particularly in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, the Hijra community actually existed for centuries, and they were recognized as a third gender. We know that in Thailand, that the Kathoi, which is often translated as ladyboys, they're individuals who were assigned male at birth, but they adopt a female gender roles, and they've been a part of Thai culture for centuries. Their existence is recognized in historical texts and art. I can go on and on. I can talk about in ancient Rome. I can talk about in Egypt. I mean, I can continue, but that's kind of the myth that I think is important to dispel, that being trans is somehow a modern construct that was invented by liberals. That's just absurd.
Yeah, that's a good one. The idea that it's popular, or that it's a phase or a fad, even like it's something else. Listen, no, I will say this with my full chest. There is not a single man on this earth that wakes up and says, it'd be a great idea to become a woman and give up all my rights, to give up everything and just go back into the Stone Age. Yeah, absolutely 100%. That was what I was thinking when I jumped. Yeah, no, not at all. So I definitely think that there needs to be some understanding there. Definitely misinformation out the wazoo on that one. Nathan, I see you making faces.
No, I don't know, maybe Senator Smith is going to become Dr. Senator, because he just gave us a PhD dissertation on some fabulous and important history. That'd be great. Then I have 2 doctor electeds here. But I love what he leaned into, because I was part of what I was thinking about. And so I'll sort of extend it. I think, yes, other than the fact that there's some of us who are really old and have existed more than a couple of years. So yes, for like my trans elders who might be, 70 or 80, there's so much history. But the Western world has a very particular way in necessitating, pathologizing, who we are in order to provide us legitimacy to exist, right? My ability to exist legally in this country, and frankly, other Western society do this as well, right? In order for me to get recognition, I have to have documentation, to have access to services, to have almost anything in this country, right? So the gatekeeping that exists, and if you look at it through an international framework, which you sort of started to lean into, is actually really important to do. And it's something, when you look at global human rights violations and what the United Nations has chosen to prioritize, it's why the focus on the erasure of trans folks, which is not a global unification that I would like to say we want to experience, but it is relevant and paralleled in many, many, many countries around the world. And I think with the context of the political realities that might happen, and other than some very amazing emails and text messages and voicemails I've gotten the last week with gratitude and support for running, I've also frankly been getting calls from friends and community members that have grave concerns, that are considering what they do next, and frankly where they do it. Because different than in prior legislative sessions where folks have thought about leaving the great state of Florida or other states to go elsewhere, when we have a national platform, when we have folks at the federal level considering negating my existence in ways that we've already seen before, right? We know the playbook, so we're ready for what that potential erasure might look like. That's a different circumstance to sort of think about, because we have a date when that's going to begin, and we know what the priorities are because we've heard those, and we hear them every day, frankly, since the election. It does not in any way, shape, or form, and I will not allow it to have power to negate my existence. But I know it's a challenge emotionally for a lot of folks in community right now, so I want to ground in that reality. But if I could wave a wand, it would be erasing this pathologizing piece. It would see me as the human that I am, as each of us are, right? And that's a big ask in the world right now, as complicated as it is. But that's the work forward, I think, is to re-engage with folks and remind them of a lot of the things that were maybe those one-on-one conversations we started having a decade ago about who I am. Because frankly, the issues that I need Representative Escamani and Senator Smith to work on are everyday issues of affordability for me and insurance. I mean, they are the issues that I ran on, that I talked to people at their doors, that I talked to people the day of the election at different precincts around my district. We have to solve these problems. Now, at the intersections, for me, the reality, from my experience, by not being visible or present with a seat at the table means that that perspective may not be considered. But the presence of who we are, our existence, it should not be pathologized the way that it is. And unfortunately, that medical discussion very much is at the top of everybody's mind. I'll probably be in DC when this Scarametti case has oral arguments at the Supreme Court. But that is not what this great fight for our human rights is or should be about at all. Thanks.
That Nasai, I appreciate it. Go ahead, Rep. Anna Escamani, thank you.
I think both Nate and Senator-elect Carlos Smith did a really powerful job in just outlining the dangers of all the myths, because what ends up happening is that we push people into the fringes, into the margins, and they're unable to access the care that they need, which endangers them. And of course, we've seen high suicide rates, especially among LGBTQ plus youth. And we've seen trans community members have to flee the state of Florida to be themselves, to access the care that they need. And so if I had a magic wand and to get rid of some of this hatred, that's what I would focus on, is how the misinformation has turned into just this vitriolic, mean-spirited, and very hateful and demeaning rhetoric that pushes people to hide who they are, to seek shelter in different states. And it's all based in a misinformation that's perpetuated for political gain. And so I do think that it's so important for us to center the conversation on trans people and their lived experiences, to hear stories. And as Nate was mentioning, this was never controversial, right? I get very frustrated by some of these election reflections where people are saying, oh, we are too woke, and using this type of rhetoric about identity politics, when the reality is that, as Nate mentioned, all of our constituents, regardless of their identities, need us to focus on economic security, on housing affordability, on property insurance. We are not campaigning actively on an issue that only impacts a segment of the community, right? We want everyone to succeed, and that means defending all of our communities and fighting back when people are marginalized and targeted. But at the same time, it's not us who are running ads about this, right? It's conservatives who are trying to distract from the fact that they're not addressing the economic challenges our families are facing, and instead they're fear-mongering in an effort to score political points. And that is so dangerous, and especially for anyone who is marginalized, but especially those who are transgender, gender nonconforming, to see those hateful ads. It breaks my heart, but it also, of course, only strengthens my resolve to be an accomplice and to really push back against the misinformation and to help folks realize that trans kids are just kids. Trans people are just people, should be deserving of the same love and respect as anyone else. And if you're uncomfortable by that, then we need to have a conversation, me and you, right? Because that's something deeper happening. It's less about the people around you and more about something that you're grappling with. And we should address that. We should talk about that in a non-judgmental way, but we absolutely are not going to continue to target and demonize people that you don't understand, people that you think are less worthy, people that you have branded as being mentally ill. It's just so frustrating, the type of rhetoric that has perpetuated our trans community. And so I think it's incredibly important for us to, again, center our advocacy on those personal stories and to do what we can to also make it relatable to people. Because what I've said on the House floor is you've experienced what it's like to be the kid that's too tall, right? Or the kid that's too short, or so forth. Everyone has felt a notion of what it's like to feel different, to feel left out. And why would you want others to feel like that? And so I do think it's that foundational effort to be yourself and to lead with love that we need to continue to advocate for and to push for a future state and country when no one is left behind.
Yeah, I think I love that. There's actually a huge issue that as trans individuals we're involved with way more than I think people give us credit for. We're not even allowed to sit at the table and have the conversation like, the battle for yes on four for abortion and trans individuals. That's a high risk, a high rate thing. There are trans men who and non-binary individuals who still have reproductive organs and still want to have autonomy of their body and their abilities, being able to have access to gender affirming care. In this particular instance, having a hysterectomy or anything to that effect is a part of the care that could be blocked or banned. It could be prevented. The access to it, because of how it is perceived or how it's put on the table, do you guys feel like, and this will be our last question because you answered our next one, we can't Thanos snap, but you guys magic wanded it, and I love that we've grown from a snap to a wand, so I love that. But I want to end with a final question of just how are you guys looking forward to the future with the chance that we already know that they can attack our healthcare, we already know that they can attack these other prime spots that are left open. We've lost IDs, we've lost birth certificates in Florida, and so up next, the biggest fear is like name changes. Where are your hearts and your heads at about what's next for the trans community as people who are on the front lines? And we'll go with whoever.
Sure. Well, I'll jump in and just say this. Certainly, I know that the election results, particularly for the trans community, are frightening. And there's a lot of questions about what will happen next. None of us have a crystal ball of what we think, what specific issue is going to be on the table for attack, for what specific freedom is going to be up for revocation. But what we do know is that Project 2025, as has been crafted by Trump and his allies, that is so anti-trans, is actually Florida 2024. We have been on the front lines. We have been, I guess, the test case of Project 2025 right here in our own state. That is not to say that they can't come up with new attacks on the trans community that the community in Florida has not yet experienced. But what we did learn from the attacks on this community here in the state of Florida is we have learned how to combat it. We have learned how to make sure we are united in opposition and that we always show up when our communities and these issues are under attack and that they're being discussed, because we know that when we show up, not only can we sometimes stop these proposals from actually being adopted, we can potentially mitigate the harm of something that we know is guaranteed to pass. And what we can also do in our opposition, especially when we show up in Tallahassee and in Washington, is that we can lay the groundwork for legal challenges to come through our opposition and through our public stories and legislative testimony. We know that in this year, in 2024, 21 anti-LGBTQ bills were introduced in the Florida legislature. Actually, 22 were introduced that were anti-LGBT, and 21 of those 22 were either neutralized of anti-LGBTQ animus, or they were killed or stopped completely. And that one that got away, it's going to get the shit suit out of it, honestly. So I say that because we have learned here in Florida how to oppose these attacks on the trans community.
Thank you. Shots next. Whoever unmutes themselves first. You're
Paper for this? What are we doing here?
You go first, Nate. You go first.
All good. No, I think I almost said Rep. Smith. Good grief. I think Senator Smith has nailed it. I mean, we know this playbook very well. So I think we are positioned in a handful of other states, but I think Florida in particular is one. We have phenomenal local leaders and organizations doing great work, specifically for the trans community, right? And so those folks are, I think, going to become even more important in this fight. right? I think a lot of the work that's been happening, and it's a great part of the work that you're doing, Angelique, in connecting all of the local leaders. We're going to have to rely on one another and support one another and work together on some of these things. But I know, since I've been going to Tallahassee, and that's a few decades, I love seeing thousands of people show up where we used to be lucky to get a dozen. And I know we will continue to show up, as Senator Smith was highlighting. And so we won't let the foot off the gas, right? And we know how to do that and how to organize. And we've seen new leaders step forward where we didn't have leaders, and that's remarkably important. So we have folks who are more aware, who are self-advocating, who understand the nuances of what it's like to come to present at a committee or meet with a legislator and share their personal stories. We will continue to make progress. And so that collective energy will absolutely continue moving forward. And I think to really know the issues that are going to be on the table, we're going to need to listen to trans folks. I think some of the real issues that are going to be pressing aren't the ones folks are thinking they will be right now, to be frank. I think we have sometimes not let trans folks lead this work. And now more than ever, we need to listen to what the trans community is saying they need, and frankly, give them the space to do that, right? And so for the folks that are supporting and elevating that work, I would encourage, the national organizations and the state organizations and the entities that are funding this phenomenal work to continue to lean in more than ever right now and invest in the future leadership pipelines that we're going to still develop. Because I know that I'm fired up. I know there are more folks that are going to be fired up to do the work. I realize there are folks that are struggling right now who will take a step back, as they should. Some folks are taking little steps back, and other folks are diving in. All of that is as it should be. But whatever is that collective response together, if it's intentional, if it is centered and grounded where I think it can be, and we are uplifting those personal stories, as Rep. Askamani was talking about, I really do believe fundamentally that this work that we have been doing so successfully, that is just the right thing to do. This fight for equality is not some in the cloud. It is literally the legacy of humanity. We must continue to do this, and it drives what we do forward, regardless of policy and political parties. It is legitimately what humanity is intended to do and to be, and we will break through this. I think the conversations will be different. I see the obvious issues of healthcare and education and all the things, but I think it's deeper than that. And so I'm hopeful, which is a big step from where I was 6 days ago. And I hope to be even further along in that the next week or two, and the next month or two, as we get ready for session in January. But I guess the other thing I would also, a little caveat, in order to do the work, those mental health resources that we rely on, or those of us that are in leadership, we need to remind and support each other to always continue to care for ourselves. I think we need to make sure we invest in those networks of good humans as well, because we're going to need that triage, right, as we're in the fight moving forward. So I didn't want to leave that part out.
I know, that's good. I love
Yeah.
that. And closing us out, Rep. Escamani.
Well, I definitely want to echo the importance of self-care, because I do think that people are very tired constantly having to be in defense. And so we need you to rest. We need you to be with us. And a part of that requires taking care of yourself as much as you can, despite the hostile and stressful and difficult environment that we live in, especially here in Florida. I will tell you that many of my concerns as I look towards the future is the fact that whatever guardrails we had at the federal level are going to be gone. And so it does mean the importance of new institutions to protect one another. Mutual aid funds are going to become very important in the years to come, alongside solidarity among multiple movements and multiple interests. And so we can't silo off one another. Our collective liberation is all connected. At the same time, we are having to defend against an autocrat, which means pro-democracy movement and those who care about a strong democracy are also going to need to work together to flourish despite the environment that we're in. And there is a difference between organizing and mobilizing. And so I think we have to take that distinction seriously and work to organize our community so that we are ready to mobilize come legislative session and come whatever fights will also take place at the federal level. And I do think for a lot of our Florida activists, we have really mastered mobilization organizing for Florida, but now we have to scale that up. And I think a lot of other states are actually going to look towards us, to Senator-elect Smith's point, because we have, unfortunately, the experience of being ground zero for this extremism. And as other states begin to experience it as well, we're going to be that resource to help others fight back as we fight ourselves. So part of that means we're not alone. The other part of this means that it's going to get hard. So it's so important to know that you have a community that is with you, and we're working to expand that community. And we can only expand it through education, through conversations, through creating spaces like this, whether in person or online. And that also should be a part of our collective mission, is to expand these rooms so that we have more folks who are directly impacted, who are empowered to share their stories and lead the way, but they're not doing it alone, and that they're surrounded by people who understand and care. So that's going to be my focus in the weeks, months ahead, is what can we do to build this infrastructure, to strengthen mutual aid resources, and to really be there at a human level alongside that organizing level.
No, I love that. That's great. And you said you made a lot of really great points on that one. Things that I'm like very happy you spoke to. Everybody did such a great job with that question. I caught you all off guard with it. So thank you for being so well thought out and so well planned. I appreciate you all. I just want to end on the note of just, I am a very hopeful individual as I do my work in the background. I have a lot of things that I want to see come to light. And I know that I have the support of everybody on this call. And I think that it's really awesome to hear you all in such positive places. Nobody seems disheartened or lost. And I think that it's important going forward that we're preparing to be on an offensive or being proactive versus being defensive and reactive. I think in the past we've been reactive because we didn't know the playbook. We didn't have the ability to know what they were going to do. But I think we know loud and clear what's coming. And I hope to see everybody do their due diligence in their part. There's a lot of unease and unrest within the communities, and people are ready to take action and to move. And I agree completely, having that national level help, having help from other states and organizations, walking arm in arm with other groups and other disparaged people, and making sure that everybody is supporting each other on that level as well, because it is going to affect a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. We are not the only group that is going to be attacked in what comes next. But I do love knowing that I've seen already this year in every single battle, everybody working hand in hand to get things done and move forward. And not every fight is a win. Not every fight is a direct change. And even when we do win and we do want change, change takes time. No change happens overnight. And I think that that's a reality that everybody needs to walk into. But I do believe that you can plan for it. I think that you can put out the right measures. And I love that you said that there's a difference between organization and mobilization. I think you can't have mobilization without organization. I think you have to organize and plan and really set it into view what it is you want to see and truly help you execute that. And mobilizing is just the part that everybody gets to see, right? When everybody comes together, but that always takes people at the foreground doing the work, or in the background doing the work. So thank you guys so much for this. I'm definitely fired up. Nate, I'm getting you a t-shirt that says I'm fired up. We're gonna have to look for a logo, because I love that. That's something you said a lot, and I resonate with that, because as a trans person who is fighting the fight on a day-to-day basis, I want to make sure that people know that we are not sitting silently. We're not just waiting for something to happen, right? We will work and do as much as we can up until that point. But at this point in time, thank you guys so much for being here and for being a part of this. I cannot wait for everyone to see. I was about to say, how did you make that pop up? Like, that was like on the phones when you go like that, it makes a little heart pop up. But I love this, and I'm so very, very happy that I have the chance to know you all and to work alongside you guys. So thank you for being a part of our Trans Awareness Week panel, and I look forward to seeing you guys. Thank you again, and we will see you later.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Keep fighting.
Thank you.